How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Training Camp Podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Happy holidays to all of you guys. I don't know why, but every single week that I record these a week apart from every time, but the weeks are feeling longer and longer. So who knows why? I mean, at this point, literally next week, it's wild. So look forward to doing this every single week. I hope you guys look forward to these every single week as well. So first of all, just real quick, if you guys didn't miss it in the last episode of the podcast, we are doing a giveaway. So you guys can go and check out the previous video for rules on that, or you can go check out the Instagram. I just hit the desk. Or you can go check out our Instagram link in the description to see how you guys can win yourself a $75 Amazon gift card. So last night, the Rams and the Patriots played, and the Rams entered that game, I think it's like a 3.5 point favorite, I want to say. And damn, did they take care of business. Holy crap, Rams. I've already done a segment on them, and right after I did a segment on them, they were really, really bad the following week. But hopefully they're not going to follow suit, because I'm sticking with it. I'm saying the Rams are one of the best teams in the NFC. Like, if you look at their team, it is so well balanced that they need to be given the respect that, hey, they can be a contender in the NFC. I mean, up there with teams like Tampa Bay, up there with teams like the Saints, up there with teams like Seattle. They are the best of the best when it comes to the NFC, and honestly, they're a top 5 team in the NFL in my opinion too. I mean, they are. I don't get it too, because they have a great quarterback. They have a good quarterback. Like, Jared Goff is a good quarterback, but he's not like a star quarterback. Like he isn't one of those like guys who's just highlights all the time. He's carrying the load by himself. Like so I don't understand it. But I mean, it's all credit to their head coach. Like, if we look at the stats, also their defense. Holy crap, their defense is so good. I mean, looking at their defense on the year, 18.9 points per game, 190 pass yards per game, 94 rush yards per game, and they're second in the league with 42 sacks behind only Pittsburgh. So, yeah, their defense is good. Their defense is honestly a top 3 defense, especially over the last couple of weeks. I mean, they have every single box on defense covered. They have pass rush with Aaron Donald. They have great linebackers that they can drop back into coverage, or they can drop them down into the zone if they want to do a blitz. Or, if they need to be passed on, they have Jalen Ramsey in the secondary who can cover their star receiver. I mean, let alone he shut down DeAndre Hopkins, who's one of the, if not the best receiver in the league right now. And he's been shutting down these top tier receivers. So, I mean, they literally have every single box covered. And, I mean, their losses are mostly for the most part only in division. I mean, San Francisco obviously has been owning them this year, but again, divisional games always hit way differently than regular games. And I mean, Goff, yeah, he's not, like I said, he's not a flashy quarterback, but I mean, 3,500 yards this year, that's 3rd in the NFL. 68.2 completion percentage, that's 10th in the NFL. He's got a 93 passer rating. Jared Goff is doing great for them right now. I mean, I would rather have him over probably half of the NFL quarterbacks, if we're being completely honest. And you know what? He does what the team needs of him. He doesn't do more, and he doesn't do less. There are occasions where he will do more, and I think those reasons are why the Rams paid him. I still think they overpaid him a little too much, but they still paid him nonetheless. And I think, you know what? The Rams they have not been bad. Like, okay, they're 9-4 right now. Yeah, last season they didn't make the playoffs. What were they? They were 9-7. Okay, season before that, 13-3. Oh, okay. Season before that, 11-5. Like, they've been so consistently good. But again, they're not like flashy. I think the last time people really cared about how good the Rams were was when they had Todd Gurley, and it was because Todd Gurley was just dominating the league at that time. So, I mean, just because you don't have a little bit of flash doesn't mean you're not a good team. And I think not Seattle, but the Rams, they put themselves on the map last night, especially with that primetime game. I mean, let alone Sean McVay coaching this team. He's so good. He's so good. He's one of the best coaches in the league right now. Don't believe me? Okay, cool. Let's do a blind test. So, Sean McVay, and then, the coach we don't know. So, Sean McVay, 42-19 over the last 4 seasons. Mystery coach, 40-20 over the last 4 seasons. Now, this mystery coach, people love this coach. People respect this coach. People honestly sometimes fear this coach when they're playing each other. But Sean McVay has a better record over the last 4 seasons. Who is the mystery coach? Is John Harbaugh. That's right. He's doing better than John Harbaugh over the last 4 seasons. John Harbaugh's gone 9-7, 10-6, 14-2, 7-5. So in every single one of those seasons but one, Sean McVay has had a better season. And that was last season when Lamar was just on fire. John Harbaugh's not a good enough coach. Okay, we'll do another one. Here's another blind coach you guys can compare him to. So again, we've got Sean McVay, 42-19 over the last 4 seasons. Now, the hidden coach, also 42-19 over the last 4 seasons. This coach, I can't even say enough about this coach without giving him away. So yeah, it's the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick. They have the same record of the last 4 seasons, and you can't tell me. I mean, I don't care. I don't care who the Patriots. They haven't had receivers. They've had an elite defense. They've had the greatest quarterback, and they've actually had a really stout running game. So don't give me none of that. Oh, they don't have weapons. So yeah, Sean McVay is up there with some of the best coaches. I mean, seriously, could they beat which teams? Tell me if you could tell me which teams they cannot beat. You think they can't beat the Packers? I think they beat the Packers. They did beat the Bucs. We've seen that. I think they could definitely beat the Saints. Their defense is good enough to do it. And I mean, other teams we've seen them beat Seattle. We've seen them beat the Cardinals. That the Cardinals would make the playoffs. I mean, they are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now, and I would not want to face them in the playoffs if I was anybody in the NFC. And then just looking at the remaining schedule, Jets, Seahawks, Cardinals. That's at least one guaranteed win over the Jets. So they're at least going to win 10 games this season, which shout out to Sean McVay, who in his 4 seasons as a head coach has not won less than 9 games. That's absolutely ridiculous. But Jets, Seahawks, Cardinals. They've already beat the Seahawks once. They beat the Cardinals once, and they have the Jets. They could win out. They genuinely could win out. I think the Seahawks have better weapons offensively and a better quarterback, but I mean, the defense of Seattle is such a liability that the Rams could win this game again. And I mean, with the Cardinals, they're on a bit of a downturn right now, and especially I think Kyler's still playing hurt. So yeah, I mean, the Rams could win the division, especially because they already have the win over the Seahawks. So the Seahawks are the only real threat for that division title right now. The Rams, man, so if they win out, they will be 12-4. They would need the Saints to lose 2 games and the Packers to lose. Okay, I was gonna say, could they maybe take the conference, but probably not. But they could maybe take the 2nd seed if the Packers drop another game. That would be really interesting. This is a team that I do not want to play, especially in LA. I know that there's no fans, but the game is just completely different when you're playing in a home stadium. So, man, shout out to the Rams. You guys are so underrated. I don't understand how you guys are this good, honestly. Going into the season, I probably thought you guys would have won like 8 games, and you've already surpassed that. So, props to you guys. But, I mean, being in a big market will help that out for you. I mean, LA, obviously one of the biggest markets. Speaking of markets, Paul George. Yeah. This dude just signed. He did not, this is going to be, I don't know if this is controversial. He did not sign a large market contract. He signed a small market type of contract. Not as in it is a small contract, but he signed a contract that small market teams offer players. He signed a contract that the Clippers, I don't know why they did that, but I think this is what I'm going to compare it to. His contract, I'm going to compare it to the Gordon Hayward contract. Why? Because both got a lot of crap. Like everyone's saying, the Clippers got finessed by Paul George. People are saying the Hornets got finessed by Gordon Hayward. And, Gordon Hayward obviously got the $120 million over 4 years from Charlotte. And here's the deal, though. Like, setting aside the Paul George thing for a second, everyone always gives crap to these small markets for offering these outrageous contracts to just like mediocre, average, above average players. But it's like, who's going to sign there? Okay, so look at the free agents here. Did you think Paul George was going to decline his player option and then go sign with Charlotte? Did you think Anthony Davis was going to go sign with Charlotte? Did you think Giannis next year wants to go sign? Like, there's no player that wants to play for a small market team. So when there is a certain player like Gordon Hayward's level who will accept that, they're just going to offer them money because there's no one that's going to sign there. These teams' best options are to just get good players in the draft, and most of the time they don't because it's just a franchise issue. Let's look at some of the worst contracts of this decade. The Grizzlies, they offered Chandler Parsons $94 million over 4 years. The Hornets, they offered Nicholas Batum $120 million over 5 years. It's basically the Gordon Hayward contract, but with an extra year. The Mavs offered Harrison Barnes 4 years, $95 million. The Magic offered Bismack Biyombo 4 years over $72 million over 4 years. The Hornets again, Terry Rozier 3 years, $56 million. The Wizards, they gave John Wall 4 years, $170 million. And the Nets made that trade for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, which had a $30 million combined cap hit between the two of them. And, this is just something that happens for small market teams because no one's going to voluntarily sign there. Do you really? Okay, Terry Rozier, do you really think like the Lakers were going to offer him 3 years, $56 million? No, he's going to take the money because he's not going to get a bigger contract. I mean, John Wall is a great NBA player, but he's not worth 170 over 4 years. But again, the Wizards, they want to stay relevant somewhat. So you sign your star player and you overpay him a lot. I mean, I think another great example of this would be like a Chris Paul contract when he signed with the Rockets. He's not worth that big of a contract, but I mean, you got to stay relevant somehow and you got to appease the players. I mean, and it's also just a case of recency bias. The Mavs made that Harrison Barnes signing after the Warriors and all of their championship appearances, and they thought, man, Harrison Barnes might be able to solve this for us, so we're going to pay him a bunch of money. And he wasn't. Bismack Biyombo had a great playoff run. This is why you see these players show off in the playoffs, because they know they're going to get a contract from these small market teams, and just because that's the best that small markets can do. And so now going back to Paul George, I mean, he signed a small market contract. He got all this money, but like, why? You got desperate. You didn't have to do this. Paul George is not the best option. There are a bunch of players that I'm sure that would love to go play in Los Angeles and would probably take a cheaper cut. And that's another issue I have with this contract is like, really, you had to sign this big of a contract, Paul George? You couldn't, like do an AD, make it cheaper, do a Steph, make it cheaper so you can sign better role players? Because between you and if they re-sign Kawhi, how are you guys going to fill out this roster? You guys don't have any draft picks. You guys can't draft anybody. Like, you don't have any caps, so who are you going to sign? All of your players apparently hate your 2-star players. Well, it's more Paul George than it is Kawhi. So it's like, Paul George talks about being a teammate and a captain, but, I mean, you just did one of the... Again, you're not worth $226 million. Like... And even if you are worth that to a small market who is in desperation for a good player, like the Detroits, like the Memphises, like the Mavericks, like the Magic, like the Hornets. Like, that is a contract I could see him signing. Like, or Indianapolis, I think, would be another great example of that. So, yeah, I mean, that contract was really stupid for the Clippers, unless the Clippers are just thinking about trading him, like doing a sign and then looking around for the waters, like, hey, what can we get for Paul George? But I doubt they're going to do that. I don't think the Clippers... Paul George isn't the answer. I do like Paul George. I want to get that. I want to get that out of the way. I like Paul George, but he's not what he used to be. I mean, that injury kind of changed his game, and he's not clutch, and he's extremely inconsistent. So, and he's not the leader I think he sees himself as on this team. So yeah, $226 million. That is something that you would see someone who had a good playoff run sign with a small market team. Just to fill up their wallets, or as a desperation move by a team who is trying to stay somewhat relevant. And you know what? I think the Clippers are turning into that. It's funny. They're a small market team in a big market city, basically. I mean, you have the Lakers right across the street. Actually, not across. They're literally right across the hallway. So, LA. I mean, if you really want to be relevant, you got to do a better. You got to offer better contracts to a better player. And you guys got desperate and you offered a small market contract. So, don't know the thought process there, but probably wasn't the best one. Coming up in the next tier, we got my NFL tiers and, of course, the wallet winner. So stick around for that. Welcome back to Drink Camp Podcast. If you guys missed it in the last leg, we talked about the implications and my thoughts on the Paul George contract, as well as why I think the Rams are one of the best teams in the NFL. Sticking by that. And now I know they're going to lose next week, because every time I talk positively about a team, they always do shitty the next week. So sorry, Rams. Oh, you guys play the Jets next week. Hopefully I'm not an actual jinx, because that would be really embarrassing if you guys were the Jets' first win. So I do these every week. We have my NFL tiers. If you're new here, I got 6 different tiers, and I place every single team in them. This week, I only had 3 changes, and I am accounting for the Thursday Night Football outcome. So I guess like there's one game this week that kind of influenced everything. But I did wait for that game to make these tiers, because I wasn't just gonna be like, it doesn't matter. And then, like, let's say the Patriots blew out the Rams by 60, then I'd be like, oh, I have them in the rebuilding tier or whatever. So I took that game into account. And so we'll talk about one of those teams first. I do have the Pats jumping up to the looking into the playoffs tier. I know that they just lost, but the rest of their schedule is, I don't want to say easy, but it's division based. So they could still make a push for the playoffs. And if you're looking, I mean, like, there's also the Raiders who are still kind of in the hunt. They're probably, I think the Patriots will probably finish with a better record than the Raiders. It wouldn't surprise me if the Patriots went like 9-7. I know the Ravens are also kind of sneaking in there, but the Ravens have it's not an easy schedule, but it's also not like, because like they have a good defense that they have coming up within the Giants, and they play the Browns this week, so it's not a cakewalk of a schedule. And then you got like the Colts, who are technically in there, but anything can happen. I mean, they play the Raiders this week, so that'll be really interesting to see what the implications are. I mean, this is probably the best week when it comes to like implications for the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, the Patriots, again, I'm not making them a playoff team. I just think that they're looking in, and I've had them in the rebuilding tier, and I probably honestly should have moved them up last week, but I don't know why. When you have a quarterback that has like 5 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, I have a hard time buying into that team. But I mean, Bill Belichick is the head coach, so, and that defense is really good, even with all the players they've had set out. I don't understand it, man. You guys, honestly, Patriots, you guys should have just taken this season out, gotten a good draft pick, gotten a great quarterback. Like, you guys probably could have just called it in this season and gotten like, I don't know, Justin Fields. If you guys just won like 2 games, maybe get like Zach Wilson in the top 10. Like, I don't know why you guys didn't do that, but hey, man, maybe Bill really does care about everything, doesn't want to tank. So yes, Patriots, they have moved up from rebuilding into looking into the playoffs. I dropped Chicago, so basically the Patriots and Chicago switched. Chicago was in looking into the playoffs. Now they're in rebuilding. Man, you guys suck. Chip, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chip, but man, you guys started off so good, and I was like, I had them in the playoffs at one point. I was like, yeah, they're good. They're winning games. They're not winning games. They're not winning games at all. They don't have a quarterback. Like, I was just talking about how the Patriots should have just phoned it in and gotten a good quarterback. You guys should just phone it in and get a good quarterback at this point. Like, finish in the top 10, draft Zach Wilson. I mean, in the last episode of the podcast, I said you guys should take Kyle Trask in the second. If Kyle Trask falls to the second, which he's looking great now, so who even knows if that'll happen. But you guys phone it in. Phone it in, get a quarterback, get rid of everything else. It's fine. You're not going to get a playoff spot. It's over. It's fine. It's over. Just call it season. Extend Allen Robinson. Do something. It's over. I'm sorry. And the other team that I had is the Rams. I wasn't sure going into the Patriots game. I was like, am I going to have to drop the Rams if they lose this game? And then you watched my first segment. Nah, they're a conference contender. I can't put them in a Super Bowl contender because I don't know if they could beat the Chiefs. Man, the Chiefs are just so good. They're so good. But I mean, every single team that is in the conference contender tier, they can beat. And they can beat every team below that as well. I literally think if you're in that conference tier, I think you can beat any of those other teams except for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are above you. But the Rams, they're good. I don't get it, man. How? you guys are like just like a boring team. You guys are like a boring fun team because you guys do everything so well, but you don't do it with flash. I mean, I admire you guys. Your defense is great. You guys honestly haven't suffered the injury bug this year either, so that's been really good for you. Cam Akers, I forgot to even mention him in the first segment, but he's a breakout running back. I mean, against the elite. I mean, yes, the Patriots are an elite defense. You saw what they did to a great rookie quarterback in Justin Herbert last week. They are still an elite defense. Against an elite defense, Cam Akers ran for 170 yards? Man, you guys are never going to be bad, are you? You guys are literally never going to be bad. Well, you know what? I respect it. So, yeah, you guys bump up. I considered moving the Steelers down, but unless they drop, I think, like 3 of their next games and the Browns win out, it's likely that the Steelers will just win the division. So, and honestly, I mean, if Pittsburgh wins this week and if the Browns lose this week, then Pittsburgh locks up the division. So they're still in that top tier. I still do think they could beat like basically any team besides the Chiefs. I think that they could beat the Titans. I think that they could beat the Bills. We're actually going to watch that this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. The reason that I was thinking about dropping them wasn't just because of they lost this week. It's an NFL season. You're not going to go 6-0. People are going to overreact just because they were undefeated and because people hate the Steelers this year. But the reason I was thinking about dropping them was just because of the injuries. Bud Dupree, and then now Robert Spillane, who knows, he's out for a couple weeks. And then now Vince Williams is on the COVID list. So, I mean, that's going to affect the Bills game as well. Minka got hurt for a series or two in the last game. Steven Nelson was out last game too. So, I mean, they're just, Joe Hayden's going to be out this game because he's in concussion protocol. James Conner's been out. Like, Pittsburgh has been one of the teams that's just gotten the injury bug. So that's one of the reasons I'm a little worried about them. If they do lose this week, I don't know what I'll do. I got to watch the game because if it looks bad, then I'll probably drop them. But if they lose in like with dignity, like it looks like a good game, then they'll probably stay. But I don't know. I just can't drop them yet. I mean, you're 11-1. You should probably be considered a conference contender. Other two teams, well, I guess it's three teams. If Taysom Hill keeps playing like this, then I'm going to move the Saints up to championship contender because I want to see Taysom Hill play a real defense first. But, I mean, Sean Payton, how do you do this with backups? Maybe your backups are just good because there's no way you could have done this with Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges last year, right? Right? Like, there's no way. Right? Please, if so, can you give Tomlin some tips? But yeah, the Saints, they're slowly getting into their groove. I mean, I think one of the biggest things was that Taysom Hill wasn't throwing to Michael Thomas. But I mean, Michael Thomas is also out for half the season, so you're gonna have to find a groove at first. And that last game, they threw to Michael Thomas. They're not really using Kamara as running back anymore, even with Taysom Hill. They're using him still as just basically a wide receiver in the backfield. But I mean, he's still one of the top 5 running backs in the league right now. So, I mean, they have the weapons. Their defense is, oh my God, good. I was talking about the Rams defense. I mean, the Saints defense is another one that's just so underrated and so good. So, I mean, I just hit the mic again. Yeah, if the Saints can beat, if I can see Taysom Hill put up a good game against a good defense, I will be all in on the Saints being a championship contender, which is funny because at the beginning of the year, I was like, I don't know if they are. Other two teams, man. Okay, so the football team were the biggest headline because they knocked off the undefeated Steelers, but the Giants beat the Seahawks as well. And I think if the Steelers had beat the football team, then the Giants would have been the talking point of the week, like throughout this week. But I mean, no one's talking about that game after Sunday just because of the Washington football team upset. But I mean, the Giants, like, what? Where did that come from with the backup quarterback? Like, Colt McCoy's not even like a great backup. He's a mediocre backup. Like, how did you? Huh? I don't understand. How'd you guys do that? Your defense is so good. Joe Judge, is he another Brian Flores? I guess I don't know. I mean, there's not many Bill Belichick coaches that come out, but Joe Judge is looking real, man. I mean, they're doing all this without Saquon as well. I mean, yeah, the Giants are a team. If they win the division, they get a home game. I don't want to face them at home. I mean, literally, okay, if let's say both these teams win out, the football team and the Giants, say they win out, then they're both going 9-7, which means that they could probably maybe even sneak into the 7th seed. So you could potentially, after all of our jokes, have 2 NFC East teams in the playoffs. That would be the most 2020 thing ever. But like these two teams, man, even with Antonio Gibson out, the football team's defense is so good. These two teams, I mean, they're still only am I looking into the playoffs tier because I'm not sure which one like I would pick that could win a game in the playoffs. Not because like I don't think either of them could, but I'm not sure which between the two could. So they're only looking in, but man, those teams, I do not want to face either of them right now. Yeah, those two teams are just looking absolutely phenomenal. So look out for those two teams. I'm trying to think who did the Giants play this week? Oh, I know the football team plays San Francisco because I'll talk about them in a little bit. But they play the Cardinals this week, and I know the Cardinals are favored in that game, but I mean the Giants could easily pull that game out. Oh, I actually do talk about New York. Well, speaking of New York and the football team, let's talk about them then, shall we? We're gonna move into my wallet winners. If you guys are new here, I do 5 picks for NFL betting. And you know what? I was 5-0 last week. That's right, 5-0. You know what that did? That put me above 500 on the spread. First time in the year. Let's go. It doesn't put me overall 500 overall, like above 500 overall my picks because I do my upsets. But I mean, spread alone, 25-24. Yeah, 5-0 last week. I'm so happy. That was so good. Even though Pittsburgh lost, still so happy. 5-0. That's awesome. I think my second best week was 4-1. That was like 3 weeks ago. So yeah, there we go. The games that we predicted in last week's wallet winners, I had Buffalo 2.5 points against San Francisco, which weird thing. I'm going into that like literally before kickoff, the Niners were favored for some reason. So hope people cashed in on that. I had Green Bay 8.5 points. They blew out Philadelphia. My score prediction was so close too. I said 35-17. It was so close. I had Indianapolis 3.5 points against Houston. They covered. I had Washington +8. They covered and also upset. And I had the Lions as my upset of the week over Chicago, and that happened. So yeah, 5-0. Let's go. So happy. So for this week, my first one, we got Dallas going to Cincinnati, and Dallas is a 3.5 point favorite. And that is, it's funny. That's a lot of points for a really bad team, but I also don't think it's enough points for a really bad team. Cincinnati, man, they're just falling apart without. Why is my voice back? I'm 20 years old. I'm not 14. But yeah, I mean the Bengals, they're just falling apart without Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the only reason they're winning games or like somewhat competitive this year. And yeah, I mean Dallas 3.5 points. I'm gonna take that. I think they're gonna not blow out Cincinnati. I have them winning 20-10. So it's not necessarily a blowout, but I think they're going to dominate the game. They should, I don't know if they will, but they should just rely on Zeke. Andy Dalton's good enough to, guide the offense and get some receivers open. Their defense is going to be a problem. I don't know. I think giving 10 points to Cincinnati is generous to Dallas because Cincinnati could easily put up more just because of how bad their defense is. But yeah, I think Dallas can easily handle this game. 3.5 points is just for such a good offense with their potential. This should be at least like a 4.5, 5 point spread. So 3.5, I like that. And Dallas wins by 10 points. Next one, Baltimore goes to Cleveland, and Baltimore's a 2.5 point favorite, and I am actually going to take Baltimore covering 2.5. I mean, that's alone what's one of my rules? If it's 2.5, if it's 2.5, you take it because that's a field goal. And who has one of the best field goal kickers in the league, if not the best? Baltimore does. I mean, he got jinxed last week because, of course, he did because Joe Buck loves to. He's literally like a caricature of himself now. He's like, no commentators jinx, and then he jinxes them. So proud of yourself. But yeah, it's 2.5 points. That's at least a field goal covering. And I think the reason it's so close for Cleveland is because there's just a lot of recency bias because of the blowout against Tennessee. I'm not saying Cleveland is not a good team. I still think Cleveland is a really, really good team in the NFL right now. But I think the Ravens really need to make a stand, and they need to show the NFL like, hey, we're still in this. And if it means Lamar throwing the ball to Marquise Brown, who ended up eliminating me from my playoffs, because thank you, Parker, for somehow beating me by a point. 1 point. 1 point you beat me by, knocking me out of the playoffs. So if it takes Lamar doing that, which I don't know why they're not doing that more, honestly, that Marquise Brown should be to the Ravens what Tyreek Hill is to the Chiefs, but whatever, he's not. J.K. Dobbins, he's emerged as the number one running back, and he's a great running back in that system. So yeah, I mean, Cleveland could win this game. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, especially because the game is in Cleveland. But I think also Baltimore's defense is really good. Their front seven is really, really good. Really, really good. They have great corners. I think my biggest concern for Baltimore is their O-line. But, I mean, if you put Baker under pressure, he doesn't make good decisions. And if this is a cold weather game, which I'm pretty sure it's projected to be because it's later in the evening, then you're going to be running the ball more, which means there's not going to be as many passing plays, which means Baker probably won't perform as well in the passing game. So I think Baltimore, not like handily deals with Cleveland, but they win. They win by 6, 27-21. Okay. Arizona goes to New York. Arizona is a 3-point favorite. I actually am going to vouch for New York here. New York's defense is really, really good. Again, with how bad Arizona's been over the past couple of weeks, I'm surprised New York isn't favored here. And it wouldn't surprise me if by Sunday morning the line has shifted to like Arizona is favored by 1.5. And if that's the case, you still take New York on this. I think New York, like I said in the tiers segment, like you do not want to play them right now. Them or the football team. You don't want to play them. And even they do get Daniel Jones back this week, which is great. Their defense is, if there's a defense that's going to stop and slow down Kyler Murray, especially with Kyler Murray's injury, he's not going to be running the ball as much. And honestly, Arizona's run game hasn't been what we expected it to be with Kenyon Drake, even though I know he suffered an injury for a couple of games this season. But I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was not the running back we were all expecting him to be, like the elite running back. And DeAndre Hopkins has kind of underachieved lately. He started the season off on fire, and just as of late, he hasn't been himself, which might mean he's due for a big game. So I might be eating my words here. But yeah, and also Arizona's defense is not that great. So, sorry, Lecky. I love you, Lecky, but sorry. Your defense hasn't been that great this year. It had a couple great games, but it's against bad teams. So, sorry. Still love you, though, Lecky. But yeah, and so I think Wayne Gallman also just another underrated piece of the New York Giants system. Can I stop hitting things? Mic, desk, computer, like what? So yeah, I think Wayne Gallman's been really, really good. They don't have like amazing receivers. I think their receivers are a little inconsistent. They have an amazing tight end who just doesn't either get thrown at or make use of his opportunity. Evan Ingram should be like one of the best tight ends in the league right now. So they have pieces, but they're not using them, or they're not being utilized in the correct way. But against an Arizona defense that kind of suffers a little bit, I could see New York winning this game. I don't have them winning. I just have them covering the spread. So Arizona does win this game, but New York covers 24-23. I do this team every single week. And I've been spot on almost every single time. Oh, Pittsburgh goes to Buffalo. Buffalo's a 1.5 point favorite. Man, this is one of the hardest games. If I'm a bettor, I'm staying away from this game because this line is going to change so much, especially since it's a Sunday night game. But like all the injuries Pittsburgh's had and with how bad their offense has been in second half football, which is really ironic because Pittsburgh's usually a second half team. They usually suck in the first half, and then in the second half they get it together. I don't know, man. And also 3 games in 12 days, that's going to be an effect. They're also having to travel for this game too, so they get an even shorter schedule for training and practices. But I'm still taking Pittsburgh as plus 1.5, man. And here's why. Last game, 2 things were highlighted that I think Pittsburgh's going to fix. Well, one, overall, I made a video about this if you guys want to check that out, just about my thoughts about the game. I think losing to Washington was one of the best things for Pittsburgh because if you were to lose to any team with the rest of their schedule being obviously Washington, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Cleveland, if they were to lose to like Cleveland or Indianapolis or Buffalo, it's one of those games where it's like, oh, it's a good team. They just outplayed us. It is what it is. And they probably wouldn't make necessary adjustments. But if they were to lose to like Cincinnati or to Washington, then they're going to look in the mirror and be like, okay, we need to fix our issues. And I think that's what they're going to do. What is Buffalo's one weakness? Their run defense. What is the one thing Pittsburgh sucked at without James Conner? The run game. Honestly, do people like, and when I say people, I mean the Steelers as well. Do they forget how good James Conner is? Like, do you guys not remember when he filled in for Le'Veon Bell and was like, he was in the top 100 for NFL players? He was a top 10. I think he was a top 10 running back that year. Like, I think he ran for like 1,500 yards. He's a good running back. And Pittsburgh has a great O-line. They're getting Marquise Pouncey back this week. And, Buffalo's run defense is not good. So if Pittsburgh really wants to make changes, they can win this game by using the run game, which will then open up the passing game for Big Ben. I said there were 2 things that I think woke up Pittsburgh. It was the running game being horrible, but I think the other thing is drops. Mike Tomlin came out and was like, I will fire you if you do not want to catch the ball. So there's a lot of pressure on receivers right now, especially for like Eric Ebron, who said he wants to stay in Pittsburgh as long as possible because he loves it there. He has 1 year left on his contract after this season. If he wants to stay there, he better start catching the ball. Deontay Johnson, I think he has 2 years left on his contract, but again, or like Juju might want an extension. So these players are not only playing for like record, they're playing for a job with Pittsburgh. So I think this is Pittsburgh. Washington's game was probably one of the best things for Pittsburgh. My only concerns with them is the injuries. If Joe Hayden's there, then this is especially, I'm definitely going to take Pittsburgh 1.5 here. If Joe Hayden's not there, then I'm still going to take it, but I'm not as confident in it. So yes, I'm taking Pittsburgh 1.5 to cover, especially since it's 1.5. That means if Pittsburgh just loses by 1, they're still technically covering. But I actually have them winning. This isn't my upset of the week though, but I do have them covering 1.5 and winning 33-30. My upset of the week. This team just deserves much more respect than Pittsburgh does. That's why I'm making them the upset and not just covering the spread like how I had Pittsburgh covering the spread, or like New York, I had them covering the spread. Washington goes to San Francisco, and Washington is an underdog at plus 150 right now. But yeah, Washington, they're going to San Francisco. San Francisco is I don't know how they're still like somewhat in this, but I mean, like Nick Mullins is actually kind of an underrated quarterback right now, but like without Kittle and like, all these weapons, but like Deebo Samuel's really good. But I think Washington is just kind of a little overhyped right now because of how they've had success lately. I know not winning success, but just like overall success. Like everyone's expecting them to be like a 3-win team, and they're somehow kind of like sniffing the playoffs. So Washington's defense is just really, really good. Not just their front seven, but their pass defense, their secondary, their backers are really, really good. I mean, you saw what they did to Pittsburgh last week. I mean, I know the interception was at the end of the game. They still got a really. I mean, how many batted balls they have in that game? I think that's another thing that happens when you're playing good defenses too, is you drop the ball because you're worrying about if you're going to get hit or not. So I mean, they're obviously putting some fear into the opposing players. And Antonio Gibson injury is a little worrisome, but I mean, Peyton Barber, he's still a good running back. I mean, I know at the beginning of the season they were deciding who should be the starting back. So I mean, they obviously see something in Peyton Barber. And J.D. McKissick, he's going to get 13 receptions. So they have a running back that they can just dump the ball to. And Alex Smith is a seasoned vet. He's probably the comeback player of the year. So yeah, I think Washington will they will pull off the upset against San Francisco. And especially, I mean, the game's technically in San Francisco, but I know it's in Arizona, so that's another thing. I think that's one of the reasons Vegas is like favoring San Francisco here, is because it's a home game, but it's not actually a home game. So this is on neutral field. I have Washington win this game 26-23. So thanks for coming to this episode of the podcast. Like I said, if you guys didn't miss it, we are doing a giveaway. You guys can check out either the previous episode of the podcast or my podcast new Instagram link in the description for how you guys can win yourself a $75 Amazon gift card. The winner will be announced on the next episode of the podcast, so a week from today. So looking forward to that. I'm not sure if, just real quick, I'm not sure if I'm going to do an episode the week after that, because that's the week of Christmas, which means I'll probably have to film on Christmas. So not sure how I feel about that. But we do get Christmas like weekend football, which I'm super excited for. But yeah, thank you guys for sticking around for the podcast. Always, like I think I always say this every episode, but I appreciate you guys more than I can say. You guys have been awesome in supporting the podcast, and we're going to get guests on soon, I promise. But yeah, so thanks for watching this episode of the podcast, and I'll see you guys next episode.